thank you all for coming. I really appreciate you taking the time out of your schedules to listen to my speech about whether Hawaii should adopt some form of legal gambling to fund education. And it's an important topic to me because I'm currently a student, and underfunding could mean that a class for the program I want to take could be cut out and then I wouldn't be able to graduate. And it's also important to me as a concerned citizen. I want the future generations, the students, to have a good education. No one wants their child to fail academically and shouldn't have to because of state's failure to provide for them. And I could be a parent in the future, so I want to make sure my child gets a good education. I'm also a rights activist, like human rights and animal rights, that kind of thing. And I bet you didn't know that a basic human right is being violated, which is not okay. Quality education is a basic human right as declared by the UN in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. However, budget cuts and underfunding have been inhibiting children from getting a quality education. According to the Washington Post, a high school teacher spoke of scrambling to find chalk and not having enough paper to give their students during their finals. And in another school, there aren't enough books, so teachers must copy down as much as they can before they reach their paper quota. And librarians in a school ran an after-school program to help children whose parents don't speak English with their homework. Later, due to a huge budget gap, those librarians' jobs were eliminated. These are examples of how basic human rights is being violated and how bad the conditions in some schools are. And underfunding is a major problem in today's education, especially right now because of Donald Trump's plan to cut funding to the education department. However, states have shown that gambling provides much money to education. The proceeds from gambling go to a variety of things as determined by the state. Many states boast that money from lotteries go directly to public education funds. Millions and even billions of additional dollars have gone to state education budgets as a result of lottery participation. In North Carolina, according to the North Carolina Education Lottery, they have added $2.2 billion into their education budget, which helps soften the blow of the latest economic recession. And Virginia generated nearly $22 million in revenue on the Mega Millions game alone. All of the money reportedly goes to their state's education budget. ABC Local reports that for every dollar on Mega Millions lottery tickets, schools receive 32 cents. The total amount of revenue could exceed $100 million, according to some estimates, which could save up to 1,000 teaching jobs that are currently on the chopping block. And in California, all lottery donations to public schools from kindergarten to college total a bit over $24 billion since 1985. Helping fund education sounds pretty good, right? It's generated millions of dollars already for various states. And gambling to fund education in Hawaii seems like it would be a good idea, and it makes sense to, seeing as Hawaii is a major tourist destination, and when people go on vacation, they like to gamble and stuff, if their state has that where they're going. And that is until you look at the facts, that some states where there is a form of legal gambling, they are the same ones that are in the midst of major cuts to their education budgets. And as you can see on this graph by the U.S. Census Bureau, the total capital spending on public school systems has gone down since 2008. It went from $75 billion down to $48 billion in 2013. And so this means that during the latest economic recession, they spent more money on their education budgets than they do now. And that's not okay. And so if the lotteries and casinos are thriving and sending in millions of dollars per year to their education budgets, then why aren't the schools doing just as well? Makes you wonder how some public schools have to hold fundraisers just to keep the lights on, and have to scrounge up fundamental things they need to be able to teach, instead of just having them. In fact, in state after state where the lotteries send millions of dollars to public education budgets, schools are still underfunded. Why? Well, the problem isn't with gambling itself. The problem lies in the state legislature. Time and time again, various states have shown that they will go back on their word. They said that they would use the revenue from gambling to help fund the education budget. While it's true that revenue from gambling does go towards the education budget, the problem is that the more money the lotteries bring into schools, the more the state cuts the education budget. As the Washington Post puts it, instead of using the money as additional fundings, legislatures have used the lottery money to pay for the education budget and spent the money that would have been used had there been no lottery cash on other things. So far, funding state education budgets through gambling hasn't worked as it's supposed to. Why would Hawaii be different, especially with Trump's plan to cut non-military spending? While it's not guaranteed, there is a high likelihood that Hawaii will follow the trend of the other states. Hawaii will promise to use the revenue from casinos to help fund education. Instead, they will end up replacing state funding for education with the gambling revenue and will allocate the education budget money to other things. And there are other alternatives to gambling to help fund education, such as taxing vacation homes. Currently, non-permanent residents can own a house here and they don't have to pay tax. Creating one would give a boost to the state budget. And a fact to know is that Hawaii is one of only 2 states that has no form of legalized gambling at the present, and the other state being Utah. And there was an attempt to change that. There were bills introduced in 2010 requesting a study to be done into setting up a casino, and in 2012 for the regulation of online poker. These bills didn't get far through the legislative process before being killed off. Since it is shown that Hawaii doesn't want to legalize gambling, why should we push it? There's no reason to, because Hawaii is doing good as it is now. So if there comes a time where Hawaii votes on whether or not they should legalize some form of gambling to help fund education, you should vote against it. Legalized gambling is shown to not work as it is intended to or as it is promised to, and that it actually makes things worse, such as gambling addictions. So